Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today, I have I have actually two guests on today. As our subscribers know, often I will be on here just talking about best practices for building professional relationships. But occasionally, I'll be interviewing subject matter experts, authors, speakers, thought leaders, social scientists, and these people share their knowledge to help us build better relationships. Today, like I said, I have two guests. I've got John David Mann, and he is the co-author of more than 30 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers and 5 national bestsellers. His classic 2008 parable, The Go-Giver, co-authored with Bob Burg. If you remember, Bob Burg was my 100th guest, or 100th episode, I should say. That earned the 2017 Living Now Book Awards Evergreen Medal for its contribution to positive global change. And I shared with John before we hit record, I've had 4 conversations today, and it's come up totally unsolicited in every one of those conversations. Also with me is Anna Gabriel Mann. She's the better half of David John, and she earned her degree in clinical psychology before going on to serve as an educator, therapist, corporate trainer, speaker, and coach. She currently coaches Go-Giver Marriage clients and leads the Go-Giver Marriage Coaches Training Program, training coaches from around the globe. And they are the co-authors of a book called The Go-Giver Marriage, a little story about the 5 secrets of lasting love. And just quickly, I've kept in contact with Bob Burg, and he sent a note to me saying, hey, this book is coming out. Please support it if you would. And I said, I would love to get them on a podcast. And this is not a marriage podcast. As you know, this is a podcast about professional relationships, but I've made the point time and again that relationships are relationships. We don't have a special place in our brain for our marriages and another place for business. It's really kind of all the same. So I really wanted to bring John on and Anna on and really talk about relationships as they see them and draw the parallels. So with that, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you. Great introduction.
Thank you so much.
Well, Go-Giver Marriage, again, many of the listeners here have read The Go-Giver, and so they're very familiar with it. And the term Go-Giver needs really no introduction, but you guys have put a different spin on this. And we are not going to get into all 5 of these. There are five principles. We're not going to get into all 5. If we can get into a couple, that would be great. People, buy the book. It's a good book. Where did this come from? I mean, the Go-Giver was out there. At what point you say, we should do this for marriage, or maybe that came first? I don't know.
Actually, the Go-Giver wasn't out there. It was in here. It was
okay.
So the Go-Giver came out, as you said, in 2008. 3 years earlier, the first draft. Bob and Anna and I had a conversation. We were talking about the idea for this book back in 2004.
Okay.
In early 2005, right around this time, actually, March 2005. The first draft came spitting out my desktop printer. And Anna, who's the first reader of every book, every first draft of every first book I've ever written, she picked it up and she read it. And Frank, you got to understand, this is 3 years away from actually getting published. So it was an early, rough draft. And Anna read it and said, this is going to be big. This is great. This is awesome. This would make a great book about marriage. Because it is exactly what you said. It's about relationships. I mean, the Go-Giver is a business parable, but really it's a life parable, because that is the truth of business. That a great business person is great at relationships. All business is about people.
Yeah.
So Anna had this idea because this is her professional background. This is her life, couples counseling and couples coaching and marriage coaching. This, she said, would make a great book on marriage. And we've been wanting to do this book ever since then, 17 years ago.
Wow. It's life gets in the way, doesn't it? Of
other things
good
happening, other
Sure.
books, other Go-Giver books, for example.
Sure.
And also my career as a writer needed some room to grow. And it was not time spent idly, but we're really glad that the time came around and for this book to come out.
Well, and we don't need to get into this, but I'm sure that it's better 17 years later than it would have been 17 years ago, because you just have experiences and that have added to it. I'm just guessing, but that's how my life seems to work.
Of course. And also, we decided to write it in the middle of the pandemic.
Yes.
Just as the pandemic started, that's when we had begun writing. And we knew that people were cooped up. They had their kids underfoot, and they were trying to run businesses on Zoom. And, speakers all across the country were literally halted in their tracks. Mm-hmm. And, that was my career. I've done a lot of speaking and being out there, teaching, training. So when it all stops and everyone's underfoot, and these families are struggling because they're trying to find a space away from each other where they can be on their separate Zoom meetings to go to work, and the kids are out of school, and terrible things were happening behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So it became more important to us to get it out there, because it had waited a long time. I mean, when every Go Giver book launched, we wanted to give it 2 years plus to get its feet under itself. You don't want to create a succession of books that compete with each other. And certainly that's part of why we waited.
Oh, good. Okay. Go Giver Marriage, 5 principles. We're not going to get into them all, but I'm just going to quickly read the 5. Well, I guess we'll call them the 5 secrets to lasting love. Appreciate, attend, allow, believe, and grow. I assume they're all important, right? What do you see? Well, I guess this is for Anna. What do you see people struggling the most with of those? Or if you want to quickly elaborate on those, that's fine. I don't want to dig into, I don't know we have the time. We don't have the time. And people need the book, need to buy the book. So anyhow.
What I would say is that each of those secrets has an opposite, and all the 5 secrets, the 5 secrets weren't just something we thought up. The 5 secrets are all based on psychological development, that what you needed when you were a child, you still need as an adult. So the very things that were the foundational blocks of growing up from infancy right through childhood and into adolescence, and then making that transition into adulthood, there are very important milestones, and there are very important things that you need. One of them is that you need, ideally, an adoring parent. And how many people listening to this podcast had one? Lots and lots of people didn't. And lots of people had maybe an adoring grandmother. Maybe they had a really critical father. Maybe they had a mother who was, who knows? She might have been very gracious and wonderful, but she might also have been a tough customer in terms of the way that she interacted with her children. So the things that you need, kids are like sponges, in that they will seek out in the environment the person that will give them what they need. So they might find it in a teacher, they might find it in a coach. There's a long-standing research on what kids need and how they can live with deficits. And that says that even one really solid adult for a year or two who really praises the child and gives them positive feedback and really cares about them and believes in them has an enormous impact. So each secret is very complex, and the opposites are what I'm going to drill on right now, which is to say that I think we have an epidemic in marriages across the land and in our society as a whole in criticism. And criticism is the opposite of the first secret, which is to appreciate. Criticism is just death by 1,000 cuts. It's the pick. It's the way that we often try to control others, is by criticizing them, hoping that that'll change their behavior. It's also what we're doing on social media and in all different formats. It's happening in businesses. People are very vocal about what they don't like. And it creates an atmosphere where that sense of feeling like you belong and that you're seen and you're heard and you're understood. I mean, the desire to be witnessed is one of the most powerful drives we have in adult life. And yet many of us are walking through life feeling invisible. Maybe we're not seen by our boss. Maybe we're not seen by our spouse. And maybe we're invisible on social media. It's a tough world. in terms of being witnessed. So, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as you were talking, I quickly wrote a note, and I don't know who it was. You would know. The Four Horsemen of the Doomed Relationship. I'm trying to think of the
It's actually the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Okay, yes.
It is the leading marriage researcher. They're less therapists than they are researchers.
Okay.
And that is the Gottmans, Dr. John and Julie Gottman. And they have written about that. And one of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse is criticism.
If I remember, that was the biggest one.
Criticism is everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I would invite the listeners to ask yourself the question, when was the last time you criticized your spouse or criticized your child?
Yeah.
It's alive and well. It's a well-known habit because most of us grew up with parents where one or the other was criticizing and who criticized us. I mean, I grew up with a very critical parent. And when you have that, you second guess yourself. You're constantly trying to live up to a standard that feels impossible to meet. People leave marriages because of criticism, because it's so powerful and it impacts your self-esteem. It impacts your sense of well-being. It takes down your health. You just don't feel great when you're getting criticized all the time. And it's so easy to take it and shift it. And one of the things that I like people to know is that this is a cognitive behavioral approach. And since this podcast is about relationships, I mean, everybody knows that what you think about and what you focus on is what grows. That's what really takes over. So if you want to have a positive mindset, you have to think in terms of gratitude. You have to think in terms of looking at life with the glass half full instead of half empty. And so appreciation's the same. Love isn't a static experience that you have just because you had that, blush of romance before you got married. Life goes on after that, and that blush doesn't stay. But what is there instead is the practice of staying in love. You have to bring yourself to your marriage and to your personal relationships the same way you would bring yourself to your business. If getting to your job or your business at 7:30 in the morning is the critical time to be there to make sure you're going to answer customers' questions and be available for emails or whatever, you're always going to do it. So it's like the extra time that it takes to take 3 times a day and stop your partner in their tracks and tell them something that you really appreciate about them, something that you love, something that you see and that you haven't said. Most people say, oh, of course my husband knows I appreciate him, or of course my wife knows I appreciate her. But in truth, it's like, well, when did you tell them? When was the last time?
Yeah. It's interesting. Years ago, now my oldest was a senior in high school. I bought 4 journals. I have 3 kids, 4 journals. Every day I wrote something I appreciated about them. Started on Christmas. And then the next year, 300. It was hard. Teenage kids, it's hard to come up with things you appreciate about them.
Yeah.
But then I gave it to him on Christmas. I was going through my kid's room, one of my sons, not snooping, but just he was going off to college, whatever. And that's still there.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. One of the things about criticism that makes it so insidious, makes it so dangerous, is that it can seem very harmless and very innocent. It seems like not a big deal. Okay, it's a sniping comment, but I was kind of stressed and I was out of sorts and I didn't mean it. And she knows I didn't mean it. Well, she doesn't know that you didn't mean it. And so sometimes criticism is veiled in passive aggressive critique, like joking sarcasm. I was just kidding. And it's what politicians call plausible deniability, right? Yeah. I didn't really mean that. Yeah. And Anna and I have seen a lot of couples, decades into their relationship, sort of settle into a semi-uncomfortable, or really uncomfortable pattern of just digging at each other. And it never flares into a fight. It never gets violent, never gets rough, because it's all kind of, we don't really mean it. Yeah, but they really do mean it. These things hurt. As Anna said, death by 1,000 cuts. The flip side of that is that the practice of appreciation, too many. Now, unlike yourself, because you got it, you got those journals going.
Oh, I'm working on it.
You're working on it. So for so many people would see this first secret of appreciation and kind of think, it seems kind of elementary. I mean, it seems kind of simple. 3 times a day, find something about my wife that I love and tell her about it. That seems kind of like, well, silly almost. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. We have seen it, the simple practice of that one secret, in a matter, not exaggerating, in a matter of days, in a week, in 5 days, shift the entire tone of the marriage, even when only one person is doing it. Not the other spouse, not even knowing that it's a thing that's going on. It's because these things reach back, as Anna said, to our roots. They touch the child in each one of us, who still desperately needs to be told, Frank, you're brilliant. Frank, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Frank, I love the way you watch out for your kids and the way you take care of your boys and the way you speak to them. It's just so, that flourish, that nourishes us like watering a plant. And it's so easy to think, well, we're sophisticated adults. We're self-sufficient. We've got it going on. We're professionally accomplished. Yeah, that was the stuff of kids. No. That's the stuff of human beings.
Yeah. I saw it in corporate America before I was an entrepreneur. I had a corporate job,
yes.
And people left because they felt unappreciated.
Exactly.
Yes.
Number one reason.
Yep. They just, and my theory on it was, and of course the boss said, well, you get paid. What else do you need? No, it's not the money. My theory is I was an associate. The senior associates didn't appreciate me or didn't show appreciation because they were looking to their managers, and the managers were looking to the directors, and the directors were looking to the partners, and the partners were looking to New York for somebody to trickle down a little bit of appreciation. And it wasn't fun.
That is a great example of how powerful it is. It's a great example because people desperately want to be appreciated. And it is the number one reason people leave jobs, but it's also the number one reason people leave marriages.
Yeah.
Criticism is huge.
Yeah, I was just reading an article by Harry Reese, Rochester University, and he talks a lot about people want to be, well, what he talks about is being understood. I'm sorry. He talks about, people want to be understood as well.
Yes.
Anyhow.
But that's what appreciation is.
Sure.
Appreciation is taking the opportunity to, in very authentic terms, tell this person what it is that you love about them and appreciate. And when you do that, you witness them, and that makes them feel seen, heard, and understood.
But part of the power of appreciation, Frank, you've hit a good point, because it's not just the saying of nice things. It's not just the compliment. It's like, Frank, you're a great guy. As Alan is saying, the power of appreciation is that I observed you. I actually got it's specific. I don't just say you're a terrific guy, Frank. I say I observe you, and I learn who you are to the extent that I can actually point something out that is unique to you. There's a line in the book that says every individual is an undiscovered continent. And what we see is that people often in their relationships, the first year or the first few months or the first even few years, when they're still madly in love and doing the romance and newlywed thing, they're constantly learning about each other. But then they start having to pay attention to all the balls they're juggling in the air: the kids, the house, the finances, the jobs, the operations, the surgery, the whatever is going on. And we stop learning about each other. But we've only scratched the surface. Every one of us has so much rich history to learn. Anna and I have been together for 25 years. I'm still learning so much new material about her, so much new content. I feel like she's a book, and I've only read the first few chapters.
Right.
I hope we're alive until we're like 95, because there's so much more about her that I haven't learned yet that I want to. And that's part of what people say, how do you keep the magic alive? Read.
Yeah.
Read the book that is your partner. Learn about them.
Yeah.
That's where appreciation comes from. It comes from really taking the time and care to investigate, who is this person? What is amazing about them?
I love the line in the book: the more you give, the more you have.
Yes.
That's the Pindar principle.
Yeah.
That's a principle CEOs would do well to heed, because the more you give to your employees, the more you have in an employee. The more you learn about them, the more you appreciate them. I love the fact that the number one reason people leave companies is the same as the number one reason people leave marriages. They feel like they weren't seen,
and that's
heard.
How powerful. Yeah, and that's how powerful this first secret is. It's not minor. It's huge, because if you're doing it where you're really paying attention to the person, and John already said, it's not a passing compliment. It's not like, hey, babe, you look good in those jeans. Even though that's a sweet thing to say to her, it's much more powerful when you tell her she's an incredible mother and you feel so blessed that she is the mother of your kids. It's like, or when you say, when you do this specific thing, I just feel like it's just so great for our family and so good for us. And you're so good at it. And
I'm glad you said that, because what you need to, I hear all the time, hey, I appreciate you, right? Which is great.
Yes.
Not from just in business, right? Which is great. Yes. But the specifics really help.
Tell me more. Say more about that.
Well, I can duplicate that then. When somebody says, hey, I appreciate you, and don't get me wrong, I'm not being appreciative of the appreciation, but I'm lost. Okay, you appreciate what? My smile, my humor.
That's right.
When you pin together, hey, the fact that you have covered for me getting the kids this week, or
that's right,
staying late at work, or whatever it is, I think that tends to drive people. Okay.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And the thing about that is that, the first half of the book is called The Parable. The whole second half is called The Practice. And we say love is a practice. And it is the same thing applies in a work environment. This isn't just, well, be more appreciative. We actually give it to people as a practice, like homework. We have people actually write down 3 things a day. Like, you need to do the homework, figure out 3 things that you love about your spouse, or in this case, a work environment, it would be 3 things you really appreciate about this employee in particular. Write them down, stick them on your phone if you need to, put them on a sticky note if you have, whatever it takes, so that you have it, you've identified it, and you can actually take the time to tell them. And then tomorrow, do it again, ideally with a couple of new things. And it's okay to repeat as long as it's authentic and you mean it. But it's also good to expand your repertoire and keep growing the field of the things you see. And we found that for many couples, and this would be true in any relationship, it can feel a little awkward at first, like almost artificial. What do you mean? You mean you want me to just walk up to my husband and say, Bob, I think you're great at grilling steak. I mean, what do you want me to say? You know what? Good start. Why not? Do it. Yeah. Just do it. Tomorrow, do more and see where it goes. So it is a practice, and as you said before we got on the air, a discipline.
And the truth is that each of us knows the soft underbelly of our partner typically. And same with at work. I had a client who recently stopped her husband in her tracks and said, I watch you look out for the other people at work, and you're constantly caring about your coworkers. And you're so good to them. The people on your team love you because you're so good to them. You listen to them, you know all their kids' names, you pay attention to them, you tell them that they're doing good work. And you know what? I just so love this about you because you're so authentic and you're so real and you care. And that's so unusual in today's workplace. And she said he was like a little kid beaming who'd just gotten a, blue ribbon at the fair. He was like, and it's just that specific, and if bosses did that, I mean, think about how the landscape of work across America would change if bosses at every level were handing down the appreciation and productivity would go to the moon.
Yeah.
Over just that.
Yeah. Let's shift gears here quickly as we kind of wrap up. People buy the book, but you have the Go-Giver Marriage Coaches Training. What other things can listeners help you with? Book sales are nice. 30 cents of royalty or whatever the heck you get these days. I don't know. There's other things going on. There's more to you guys than books, and would love to share that with the listeners.
Sure. I mean, yes, the book is really just a starting point for us. This is really a calling. We're out to help people find the full potential of their marriages and their relationships, across the globe. We have a workshop that we do based on the 5 secrets. We call it Living the 5 Secrets to Lasting Love. And that is a live 2.5 hour by Zoom workshop that we do with small groups, 10, 20, 30 people. And we do that about once a month right now. We may need to start doing it more often. We'll see. We're doing it with church groups and church communities. We're also doing it just for the general public. And that's our workshop. We're also starting in the fall a coaches training program, a Go-Giver Marriage Coaches training program, which is a program of education, training, and certification to actually train people how to become go-giver marriage coaches and actually coach the work themselves, how they become certified to teach the workshop as well as to coach individuals. And this is an interesting point, Frank. It pertains again to business. When there's a line in the book that says, when you go to work on your marriage, you don't work on your marriage, you work on yourself. And there's a character in the book who started out as a marriage therapist and shifted early in her career to start working only with individuals, not with couples in the room. And she then called herself a marriage coach. That character is based on Anna, because that's exactly what Anna did. And that's what the coaching is. It's working with individuals. The idea being the way to improve my marriage is to take a look at myself, is to look at my own behavior, my own daily practice. And that's what we help people with. So that's what the coach's training program is for, to help people incorporate a training practice into their own professional lives.
Great. Anna, you want to add anything to that?
It's never too late to make a new story for your life and to create new behaviors, because what we know about behavior is that when you shift your behavior by creating a new habit, the way to get rid of a negative habit, like criticizing, is to replace it with a positive habit. When you're focused on a positive habit and ingraining that into your life, you let go of the negative ones. I've known thousands of people who quit smoking, stopped drinking diet sodas, and started taking care of their health and getting their body together and working out. And those are exactly the kinds of things. The behaviors are what shift it. And when you shift your behavior, there's documented research that show that couples create new memories and that the entire tone of their marriage changes. So the 5 secrets are all simple behaviors that are about living with a spirit of generosity.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Best place to direct people to gogivermarriage.com. Is that the best
That
place?
is it.
Okay.
One
That's
word,
it.
gogivermarriage.com.
Okay. I will put that in the show notes. Thank you for your time. This is truly a treat for me.
Thank you. This is a great service you're doing.
And
Thanks.
Thank you so much. We had a great time.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.